Okay, hello guys. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at reading Coptic, Coptic pronunciation, and Coptic letters. So in the last two videos, we got an introduction to the Coptic language, and then we also got a introduction to Coptic letters and their basic pronunciations. But as I mentioned in that video, it's likely easier for us to understand how to read Coptic when we actually do reading. So knowing the letters is nice, but putting it into practice and putting it into reading can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. So that's going to be the goal today. Okay. So I'm just going to go into Tasbaha and we'll read together um, some portions and put into practice and see a couple of interesting cases. Okay. Because knowing the letters is one thing, like I said, but knowing how to consistently read is another. Okay. So let's start with the very first. Okay, you've likely heard this. We had a video covering the long and the short Tentino, and we also had a video covering it in English. So maybe a hymn you're familiar with. But in the short tune, it would be Tentino e ipshoini shirin te pioini entenhos e ipshoi sentenigom. Okay, so let's take a look at just this first word. This first word here reads Tentino. Okay, so let's start with the first letter. Okay, the first letter we have here is Tav, which, as you remember, makes a T sound. Okay, it looks like a T, it sounds like a T, it's basically T, right? So T. Here we had A, okay? And A here is going to make a sound, right? We discussed it making an sound as in pen, for example. So T, okay? Just putting the Ta and the T together, we get T. Now let's look at the next one. Remember, we said that this was one of those consonants that sounds the same as it is in English, okay? Because again, it is. This makes an N, okay? So N, 10, okay? So tav A and ne, 10, okay? 10. Now this, we discussed, is a consonant that maybe we don't recognize because it's not something that we see in English, okay? But as remember, it's theta and it makes a th sound. So it's theta, it makes a th sound. So 10th. This, as we recall, is an interesting letter. It's an H, but it doesn't make an H sound. It makes a what? An E sound. Okay? So it's going to be an E. So 10th, okay? And then N followed by O and epsilon. O and epsilon. Now, this is a really important rule because we didn't discuss it in the last video about epsilon. Epsilon has some interesting cases, and we'll see some of those cases today. But epsilon has a few cases where when it follows a vowel, the sound of that epsilon might change, or it might alter the sound of the vowel. In this case, when we have an O followed by an epsilon, we have an U sound, right? U, okay, O. So tenthino, okay? It's a longer O, okay? So it's not like U, that omega looking thingy, right? It's a U, right? Usually an U. But here it's going to be tenthino, okay? Tenthino. Usually people will, because they're singing it very quickly, it just sounds like tenthino, right? But it's a longer O, okay? It's a little bit of a longer O. Here we again have a, okay? But as we recall, we have a jinkim, okay? Now remember, the jinkim over the vowel doesn't add any extra sound. It's just going to be its own syllable now. But because we have a jinkim in front of here, in front of the p sound, we're going to put an So ipshoy. We'll get to this in a second. But this is shy, so sh, o, e. O and, sorry, oyota. O and I, basically, right? So oi. Okay, so when you have an O followed by a iota, it's going to be, or an U followed by a iota, it's going to be oi. Okay, ib shoy. Okay, it's ib shoy. And in some hymns, you'll ignore the jinkim and go straight to it, right? Because in some hymns, we're being a little bit more musical, in the same way that when you sing English, it sounds a little bit different than when it's spoken. Okay, but for the most part, um, you're usually going to try to keep that syllable in mind. So here it's ebshoy, not just ebshoy, but ebshoy. Okay? Why? Because we have ep sh oy. Okay, so remembering the letters. An O followed by an I. So the first letters, for the first two words, tenthino epshoy. Tenthino epshoy. Okay? Again, we have an N and an I, ni, okay, she, because we have a SH followed by an E sound, okay? The shy followed by a ita. So she, and remember, ro. The P makes an R sound in Coptic. So ro, ri. So ni, she, ri, okay? So ten thino, e epshoi, ni, she, ri. Here, it's not just going to be nt, right? It's not going to be in, it's not going to be nt, ente. Why ente? Because we have a jin kim over the ne. So because we have a jin kim over the ne, we're going to have an n, t, a. Okay? P, u, okay? Remember, because o followed by an epsilon makes an u sound. P, u, oi, ni. P, u, oi, ni. Okay? It can get a little bit complex when you have vowels, okay, followed by vowels. But basically, each is going to be its own. So P, O, Oi, Ni. Okay? It's not P-O, epsilon, I, Ni. It's P, okay, that's one group. O, Oi, Ni. That's the syllables. Okay? N10, recognizable letters. And then remember the hori here, right? The hori here. Hos. N10, remember the H here, hos. Here, we have this little mark over here because it's abbreviated. When you see this, the P, O, C, and then this, that's choice. But remember, ep, choice. Ep, right, P, choice. Okay, it's not fully written out, it's an abbreviation. If you go to tisbaha.org and you look up 10th, you'll see the full written version of. But ep, choice. Okay? Ente, ni, and remember the ganga here, go. This is going to be ni, go, m. Okay? Ni, go, m. So ten thino, e epshoi, ni shiri, ente pi ooini, enten hos, epshois ente, ni g om. Okay? So ni gom. Enten hos, epshois ente, ni gom. Okay? Remember that ganga sound. Okay? Here, these are all letters we have seen. So try this on your own. Okay, try this one on your own. The hori, the o, the pe, the u, and the sima. Hopos. Okay, hopos. Here again, entef. Remember the phi here makes a f sound. Entef, er. Remember this is a hori, but there's a jin kim. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add an to beginning to it. Ehmot. Entef er ehmot. Look at how we're grouping. Entef, that's one group. Ehmot. Okay? Entef ehmot. Okay? Non, pretty straightforward. Ep, so, and remember, this is not a tav, it's a t. So it makes a t sound. It's not epsot. Okay? Epsot t. Okay? Epsot t. Ente, nen. When you have the ps sound here, okay, when you have the epski, not the epski, but the ps sound here, this is gonna be ep. You're gonna put an before it. Nen ep si, okay, and here, it's gonna be followed by an ita, so it's gonna be she. Nen ep si, she. The yota here makes like a e or sound, okay. Nen ep si, she, okay. Nen ep si, she. So hopos entef ehmo nan, em epsoti ente nen ep si she. Okay. It's not nen ep si ki. Why is it not ki? Because it's followed here by, it's preceded by an epsilon and then it's followed by an eta. Okay, she. Okay. Here, if you remember, it's a ch sound, so chen. Chen, okay? When the ganga follows a consonant, it's going to be a j sound. Okay, so here it followed a vowel, so it's nigom. Okay, nigom. Here it's following a consonant, so it's going to be ep gene. Okay, ep gene. Etheren ohi. Okay, So ebjin ethren ohi. It's not ebjen thren hohi. Okay, ebjen ethren ohi. Okay, so chen ebjin ethren ohi. Okay, again, eraten empek emtho somatikos. Oops. Okay, so practicing that. All right, practice it slowly. If you need to review a letter, review the letter. Okay, here, right? This is the uppercase alpha, and the lavla or lambda, lavla here. Okay, ali, owi, ali, owi. Okay, the jin comes on the I, making it a separate syllable. So it's not aliowi, it's aliowi, aliowi. Okay, aliowi. Here, we get another case. Remember the vita. Okay, vita here, we don't have what? A proper noun. So we don't have a name. So we're already leaning towards using V. Now, does the vita come at the end or it's in the middle? In here, it's in the middle. Okay, so it's going to be a V, evol. This is a very common word you're going to hear, evol, away. Ali owi evol. Okay, Ali owi evol. Hiten pennos. Okay. MP, he, nim. Okay, again, letters you know. Ente, ti, ev, she. Again, the vita is in the middle and it's not a proper noun. So a pretty good sign that we go say v. Ti, ev, she. Okay, remember, you still have to say ti, ev, she. It's not tevshi. It's not tevshi. Because remember, it's a t, not a tav. It's a t, not a tav. A tav, like this one up here in tenthino or ente, ehmot, right? That's a tav. It just makes a t short sound. Here, because you have the t, it's like a cross. T, and then you say evshi. So remember, we're splitting up a lot of the syllables along the vowels, like ali owi, right? You have three vowels back to back, you split them up. Ali owi. Okay, because when you have the O and the epsilon combined together, that's like one vowel because it makes one sound, right? So ali owi. Okay, you split it up by the sounds of the vowels. Same thing here. Ten thino. Let's see, p o oini, right? P o oini. Splitting it up by the sounds, okay? Because p is one sound, u is another sound, and then it's not o ini, it's oi, because the u followed by the yota makes an oi sound. So p o oi ni. Okay. Let's look at the next one. The next one here, it's an O followed by a iota, so it's going to be moi. Okay, remember me, moi, non, and again, that abbreviation, you're going to see it a lot, ipshois, Lord, right? Moi non ipshois, okay? Nu met ref er nim, right? The epsilon on its own is an E, fin. Okay, remember this is an F sound, f, fin. Okay, again, hopos, enten ka ti, remember the T, not the tav, enten ohi eraten, and bekim tho, mf nav. We reach this point. I really want to focus here. This is an epsilon, and it makes a V sound. When does epsilon make a V sound? Epsilon makes a V sound. This thing here is epsilon. It makes a V sound when it's following a vowel, A or E. So if it's following an A, or if it's following an alpha, it's going to be av or ev. Okay? For example, pros ev she. T pros ev, right? See here, ev she. MF nav, right? But when it follows an O, it's not of, it's U. So when it follows an O, it makes an U. And when it follows an A or an A, it's an ev or av. Okay, so that's called the epsilon rules. The epsilon rules are basically what does epsilon do, or what's the case or uniqueness of epsilon in the case in which it's following a vowel such as alpha, A, or O. Okay, so moinon ipshois in u meteref ernim fin hopos enten kati enten ohi eraten empek emtho mfnav ente ti e. Remember, because we're going from T, it's not just T prosevshi, it's T eperosevshi, T eperosevshi, right? Because when you have two consonants back to back in Coptic, it's hard to transition, right? To T prosef shi. You can do it, but it's T eprosef shi is easier to say. Okay. Let's look at this one. O, 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 and then o, orp. This is really interesting, right? Because again, you have two O seeming sounds, and it's very tempting to just say o, and then orp. But it's not o, and then orp, it's o, and then o, orp. O, orp. O to or. O, and then o, orp. Knock, remember? E, ipshoi, NT, and remember this, the delta, D, NT, NT, do, xo, remember, right? See here. It's gonna be a x sound, so X. Doxo, lo, geya. Okay, remember gamma here, ga. And when you have a iota followed by an alpha, it's ya, right? Doxologe ya. So when you have a iota followed by an alpha, ya. Okay? O and then o orp, inak, e epshoi, and t doxologe ya. Okay? Et e perepi. O again, and then shashni, very simple. E epko, right? So this makes a ko sound. E epko, evol, e epko. Okay, not e epsho, and not e epcho, but e epko, evol, ente, nenovi, again, vita, in the middle, it's not a proper noun. Et osh, doxasi filan ethropi. Okay? Gepe de smo choice ni evi ike, right? When you have an A follow or alpha followed by an iota, it's an I. So evi ike. Remember, E ike. So these are two different sounds. V. So the E and the V, ike, different sounds. Ne evi ike inte ipshois. Okay. Here's another example with the epsilon rules. Ni et ohi erato gen epi. Okay, when you have a eta followed by a iota, it's just a e. Ep e, em epshois, gen, remember gen ni avleo, io, right? Ni avleo, ente epi empenoti, doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. En echeri, gen ni e, this is a gor. Why is it go? Because it's preceded and followed by a vowel. Okay, so it's not ni e jor, ni e gor. Fai and neten jij. Neten jig or neten jij. That one's a little bit more tricky because some people will say neten jij, neten jig. Why neten jig? Because it comes at the end of the word. Okay, usually when it falls at the end of the word, the usual rule is to have it g, nenjig. Okay, and netenjig ibshoy ni ethoeb, right? This abbreviation is ethoeb. Ismo ipshois. Okay, ethoeb means saint. Pshois efe ismo erok evol chen seon fi et af thamio yo, right? So yota followed by o. And that's the case we're talking about, right? When you have a yota followed by a vowel, it's going to act as a y, right? Because we've discussed yota doesn't mean like an I as in sin or sick. It also sometimes operates as a y. So when it's followed by a vowel, that's when it's going to be a y. En etfe nem epkahi. Okay? Mare patiho chont empekem tho epshois makati ni katapek sa ji. This is a little bit interesting because here ni egor. Why now it's a why is it not pixagi, pixagi, right? Again, it's one of those cases when it's following an alpha followed by an I like this, usually it's going to be a J. Pek zaji, right? Pek zaji. Okay. F-A-A-Echon and Pekem Tho and J pa say yo, right? So yo, because it's a yota followed by o. Oma, kata, pekza, what? It's not going to be pekzagi, pekzaji, matan hoy. Okay. Ere na es photo vevi en u esmo esho akshan et savoy enek mithmi. Okay. Again, Nexaji. Okay. Janik and Toli, right? All these are letters now that you can begin to represent. I understand. Okay. Mar shope in Tek Jij. Why? Because again, Tekjig or Tekjij, either one's okay. Tek, it depends. Like I've heard it both ways, but Tekjij followed by an I, right? But look at here, I chi, right? So I chi shou. When you have this ch, when it's on its own, you're gonna put an before it, an right? So the same way that if you had like p, right, you'd put ep before it just to make it easier to say. But because it's already preceded by a vowel or a vowel sound, I chi shou empek o gai epshois o pek nomos peta meleti. Okay, o empek o gai. Okay, because it's the I sound afterwards. S e on injeta ipsishi ta. Remember that ps doesn't just exist on its own. Ta ipsishi, right? Ta psishi is not 100% going to sound that great. S e on injeta psishi ta ipsishi, but the is very quick. So S e on injeta ipsishi. Okay. Again, same concepts. Okay. Again here, epsilon rule, epnevma t. Okay. Doxe petri ke eyo. All right. Epsilon here acts as a y. Eyo. All right. See if we have anything else interesting in the Coptic here. All right. Same thing here is gen. Why? Because it's following a consonant. All right. So POO, emefiot, nemepshiri, nempepnevma, right? This abbreviation is epnevma, spirit. P epnevma ethoab is gentino nemshaine enteni ene tiro amin, right? So again, because it's following a consonant, it's not going to be an isgen, it's going to be isgen, right? Marafton finje ifnoti. This, by the way, is an abbreviation for fnoti, which means God. Fnoti, but you're going to just see this and then a T, abbreviation. So Israel, right? Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Ipshois, right? Theotokos, those will be abbreviated oftentimes in Coptic because they're so frequently used. So same thing with Fnoti. Sometimes it's going to be abbreviated, sometimes it's going to be in the longer form, right? Maro Gor, okay, Maro Gor, Evolenje Nef Gaji. Again, G because it's following a consonant. And then Ji, Aji, remember? So Saji, right? So Saji means word, your word, or what's spoken. Aji, okay, Tiro, Maro Fote Volcha, Etchi, Empef O, Je O On, Niven, Ethmustem Pefron, Ethoab. Okay. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing too crazy about it, okay? But my recommendation, especially because if you know the letters now, my recommendation is that you watch some of the other videos in which the Coptic has been covered and you read along. I think the best way to get those patterns and those understandings in your head is to is to practice reading the gospel, for example, to yourself in Coptic, right? Other great options is to go to your New Testament anywhere. Not everything from the Old Testament will always be in Coptic because much of the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. So all of the New Testament, or all of the Old Testament, excuse me, was written in that way. So the Old Testament, I mean, obviously it was translated into Greek, but when you're looking to practice something, always the gospel accounts are great. So let's go Mark chapter 2, right? O af I on echon ek a fa, right? Ek a far naom. Echon, right? Capernaum, but it means something different, right? So it sounds very different from the original. Ek a, so ka far naom. Ekafarnom. All right, so Ekafarnom, that would be the Coptic for it. Ekafarnom, Menensa, Han Eho'u. Okay, Han Eho'u. Afsotem J. right? So J. When you see this, it's J. It's not G. J. If F right? Here it's going to be Chi. It's going to be Ch. Why? Because it's preceding a consonant. So F Okay, so F when it's preceding a consonant, usually it will be the tougher sound of it, right? So same thing with the ganga, the ganga. Um, it's gonna be when it's following a consonant, it's going to be an E, or it's going to be like a G sound, right? Like, but when you're dealing, this is the same thing here, right? It's not gonna be F she. You could, but it's gonna be F chi. Okay, F chi when O E. O A O mish ithmoti emav hoste ente ishtem pi oli J-O-D, hiren, piro, o, afsaji, nemo, o, mp, saji. Okay. O, afin, enough, and o, I, if she, level, if chai, emof, and j, right? All of that. So again, the basic rule is practice. Like even when I'm reading this, I'm not perfect with it because sometimes if you're looking at a new text, it takes some time to to acclimate. But the best practice is just look at the letters, practice the hymns, look at the previous videos of the doxologies, and God willing, that will be a little bit helpful. Okay. But I pray that you guys found this video a little bit helpful in any way, shape, or form. And I look forward to looking at Coptic grammar with you guys in the following videos. But I love you guys so much.